Okay. All right. Welcome back. Again, my name is Marissa. I am a future music therapist. I'm finishing up my bachelor's degree as we speak. And I'm making these videos because I want to begin to start some conversations within the profession that I think are really important. I know that they're kind of uncomfortable and there's still a lot of unknowns. I mean, I'm still learning myself. I'm just trying to share kind of the research that I've done and what I found, some commonalities, just various things that I think are really important for the profession. I again want to acknowledge that my videos will not get anyone to a level of complete authenticity. My videos are I'm making them with music therapists in mind because that's who I think these videos will really help out. That's kind of the goal with them. And they're just stepping stones, honestly. I hope that we can begin the conversation and then lead to further conversations and all continue to learn and grow together. And I'm here with y'all. I don't know everything. And, I'm doing my best to give the most accurate information. And, if you have an opinion or something you want to share, you can always drop it in the comments. So my video today, I want to talk about hip hop. And when I say hip hop, I want to talk about the differences in hip hop versus hip hop, meaning hip hop, the culture, versus hip hop, the commercial product of rap music. And I think that when we talk about hip hop, people tend to think that hip hop is the genre of music, and that's simply not the case. As I found, I didn't know that either, but I found that in the research, which I thought was really interesting. And I think that's something that's really good for people to note, is that hip hop is not the genre of music, even though sometimes it is marketed as though it is, So let's talk about hip hop, the culture. So hip hop, the culture in of itself, it's kind of this way of being, and it's a lifestyle. And, it originates in the Bronx, in the 70s. It kind of was birthed out of, came about because the Black and Latino communities in the Bronx were experiencing, these high rates of, oppression and marginalization, socioeconomic, disparities, a de-industrialization period, all these big words, right? But basically put, this culture was kind of birthed to be a way, it's an outlet for people to kind of express the various things they are going through, especially when you're coming from a community whom is oppressed and continues to be so. It's kind of an outlet to kind of share those things that are happening within your community, happening for you at an individual level, whatever it may be. And, when I'm talking about the culture, I'm talking about hairstyles, language, youth, clothing. Those are just a few aspects that I think of off the top of my head that really stick out, I think. And it's really important to note that hip hop culture tends to be really closely aligned. I would argue it's almost one and the same with Black culture, because Black culture really plays a part in all of this. And, these expressions that we're seeing, they're bringing an awareness to and highlighting, but also honoring the struggles of these underrepresented and overshadowed communities, which I think is really important to note and understand, especially if we want to bring elements of this culture into the practice, especially if we work with people who are parts of these communities, because but we're not as far along as we'd like to argue. Black people are still oppressed and marginalized. POC in general are, I don't want to generalize. I take that back. I don't want to generalize. POC tend to be marginalized and oppressed still. And I think we would be foolish to act like that's not the case. And I think we need to understand that, especially when we're going to be working within these communities in our practice, But we, of course, need to avoid that, savior mentality and such. That's for the other video. That's for the cultural, appropriation video, cultural awareness, such like that. Anywho, but so jumping back to this culture, a big part of differentiating, I guess, hip hop culture from like the Black culture, is understanding that this is like a cultural engagement with artistic and stylistic elements of rap. So that being like these various things go into the commercial product that rap is today, unfortunately. So that's like DJing, rapping, breaking or breakdancing, graffiti, literature, knowledge of self. These are kind of the refinitions, or the redefinitions as they were called. And these are like the big main things that we've seen, that I found in the research, especially in regards to like what hip hop culture is and like big key parts of it. With these elements, if you want to bring these into practice, which we'll talk about in a later video, for like intervention ideas and stuff, you can bring in DJing and rapping and use those in therapeutic ways. But if you don't understand the importance behind them and like their significances and like how they came about, I feel like you want to know the history behind things. And I'm hoping I can give some of that information. So like DJing, that's like the artistic handling of beats. You have like turntables. And now as like we're getting into this more digital era, you can use like MIDI controllers. I have them right here for an example. You can use various things, which we'll talk about in the intervention video, but you can use those sorts of things to handle beats and make music, right? So rapping, or as it was also referred to as MCing, that's like putting spoken word to the beats that you make. And with these raps, people were really expressing the things that they were going through, and they're telling these stories that, they go clear back to like West African bardic tradition, So like the history in that alone, I think, is something that I would definitely recommend to look into and seek to understand. I simply don't have enough time to get into all of it, with the time allotted for these videos. But I definitely will put in some references, or I guess resources in the description of our thing. Breaking, that's like breakdancing, it's a dance form. People would have these things, they were called ciphers, where people are like, they're going in and rapping, and then you have people dancing while people rap. That's where like the break would happen, where the rap and like the words kind of drop out and that beat's still going, and people could go up into the center and like they show off their moves and like express themselves in like this totally like in a whole different way, in like a way that uses your body movement. Graffiti, there's a lot of stigmatization around graffiti as an art form, but in music therapy we talk about like art, the use of art in music, and I think graffiti would be a great way to do that. And you don't necessarily even have to use spray paint, to do graffiti, and it's just another one of those ways that people can express themselves. And I don't know, especially being in this practice, I would hate to make a client or someone I'm working with feel like they can't express themselves in their most authentic way. Like, who am I to decide that? You know what I mean? Those are the elements that I really see being used within music therapy, at least the practice, if we were to implement these elements of the culture. At least the most pregnant ones, I would say, Again, noting that we should, as music therapists, become proficient in a definition, I would argue. Whether it's DJing, rapping, graffiti art, writing, whatever, becoming proficient in one, I think, could have really great benefits for not only you as a clinician, but just the practice as a whole. We're all trying to grow here. So when I talk about hip hop, lowercase with the hyphen, that commercialization of rap music, I think the big reason I want to differentiate that is because, well, one, it's not the culture, but two, the commercialization part is, I don't want to say it's problematic, but in some ways, like, people are profiting off of this, and these are people's lives. These are people's lives, and within the commercialization, we've kind of lost that a little bit. I would say not completely. Like, people still are telling their stories and like sharing their experiences, etc., through their music, but with the commercialization, we see that the aim tends to be that we want to make it digestible to white audiences, because that tends to be where the money is, because people of color tend to be those that, I guess, are in marginalized communities, for lack of a better term. See, it's hard because you don't want to assume that again, it's very individualized. Like, I'm not saying that this happens to everyone and this is always how it is, but the links that I found in my research and the like trends I'm finding in the research lead to this. I actually have some notes on it that I should talk about, because I want to do this justice. But hip hop, the commercial product of rap music, that's even where like a lot of the discourse with music therapy has kind of been at right now. And it's this idea of like, well, how do we bring in rap music when it's so like provocative and it has all these themes and like the videos that go along with it and blah, 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 blase, blase, whatever you want to call it. And that's not all that there is to it. It's not just about entertainment value, These songs and this genre of music and this culture are really pertinent to people. And these are the people we're going to work with. And if you want to foster a good therapeutic relationship, you have to be able to acknowledge that this is someone's life and this may be their experience that you are bringing into your session. And, since it is so commercialized and the mainstream has this idea of what it looks like and what it is versus what it actually could be or is, that's where we see original messages and meanings getting lost. And a lot of the time, stereotypes are being drawn upon when we commercialize things. Because we're like, oh yeah, that's what it looks like. This is how you're the cool kid. Like, go get your J's, things like that. So, I don't know, just acknowledging that, like, this commercialization, like, really influences a lot of things. Like, from fashion and automotive design to primetime television programming. So it's just like acknowledging those sorts of things, I would say, are really important, and understanding the differences. Yeah. So to like tie it all back together to like explain, because I feel like I've kind of trailed off a bit. Hip hop culture, that's a lifestyle that people live. Whereas hip hop, that we commonly confuse for rap music, is the commercial side of hip hop, if that makes sense. Hip hop, lowercase hyphen, is what's profitable, whereas hip hop culture is the lifestyle. Yeah. So I think those are some key takeaways I would take, is understanding that one is a culture, one is a profit, and within the culture there are elements that we should seek to learn and understand and gain further knowledge on, because it's going to it's not going to change necessarily, but it's going to look different, I would argue, because if you go back to old school, new school, whatever, looks very different than what we see now in modern rap music. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop this video here. I hope that you got some good takeaways. I hope what I said made sense. And yeah, feel free to comment if you need. I'll try and like comment back or something. I want this to be like a dialogue. I don't want these videos to feel like I'm preaching at you. I just want to share like the information I have. And if there's a better way I can do that, like, let me know. Times are always changing. We're always updating and rearranging. So, okay, I'm going to stop this here.